You ever meet someone who barely talks? They're not shy, they're quiet observers. They like to analyze, to read the room, to speak only when it matters. Every word they say feels intentional, like it's been filtered through thought, meaning, and truth. Some people stay silent because they're thinkers. Some because they feel too deeply. Others because they've realized that most noise isn't worth joining. There are many kinds of quiet souls: the deep listener, the lone thinker, the silent authority, each with their own psychology, their own way of moving through the world without needing to be loud. Let's explore why some people don't talk too much, and why their silence often says more than words ever could. The conversational escape artist. The conversational escape artist is a master of quiet evasion, the one who leaves the noise without leaving the room. You'll notice them at gatherings. They nod, they smile, they listen, but when the conversation becomes shallow or circular, they disappear, not physically, but energetically. Their eyes glaze slightly, retreating into the inner landscape where ideas are cleaner and words less wasteful. For them, conversation is not sport but intimacy. Words are not entertainment, they are portals. They do not fear talking, they simply resist wasting the sacred instrument of speech on what doesn't nourish meaning. The escape artist's silence is not rejection, it is preservation. In their quietness, they protect their energy from the friction of triviality. They know that every conversation is an exchange of energy, not just sound, and that too many words can scatter the self into fragments. So they retreat, not because they lack something to say, but because they've already said too much within. Beneath their quiet exterior lies a subtle discipline, the ability to resist the pull of constant reaction. While others fill the air to avoid silence, the escape artist thrives in it. They know that the soul's most honest voice can only be heard when the world finally stops talking. The value speaker. The value speaker measures their words the way a sculptor measures marble, carving only what matters, leaving the rest untouched. In a culture where verbosity masquerades as confidence, their economy of speech confuses people. Some mistake it for insecurity or aloofness, but those who truly listen will hear the weight behind every word. They understand the psychology of value. The fewer words one uses, the more attention each receives. This is not manipulation but reverence, for communication, for attention, for meaning itself. They know that words can create worlds, but only if used with precision. To them, speaking is not performance, it is architecture. Each sentence must have structure, rhythm, and integrity. The value speaker's silence is not emptiness, it's incubation. Their thoughts are not absent, they're ripening. They speak when ideas have matured enough to serve, to heal, or to inspire. And when they do speak, they do so with clarity that can still a room, because their words have been tested in the quiet fires of reflection. The lone thinker. The lone thinker is solitude personified. They are the wanderers of the inner world, philosophers without podiums, poets without paper. For them, silence is the only space vast enough for their thoughts to stretch and breathe. They do not avoid people. They simply find the company of their own mind more truthful, less diluted by the noise of others. In psychology, these individuals often rank high in interpersonal intelligence, the capacity to understand one's own emotions, motivations, and inner workings with clarity. Their quietness is introspection in motion. They are less concerned with winning arguments and more concerned with understanding why arguments exist in the first place. The lone thinker is rarely lonely. They experience solitude as sacred intimacy, communion with thought itself. They do not chase validation, they chase understanding. To them, thinking is not an act of intellect but of devotion. Their silence is prayer. And though they may appear detached from society, they are often the moral backbone of it, the unseen architects of meaning who question the machinery of culture when others simply accept it. The lone thinker carries the burden of awareness. They see too much, feel too deeply, and know that wisdom is often incompatible with noise. The silent authority. The silent authority does not command attention through volume, but through presence. In every group, there is often one individual who speaks rarely, but when they do, the entire room goes still. Their voice carries weight not because it is loud, but because it is earned through observation, discernment, and restraint. The silent authority embodies psychological gravity, the invisible magnetism that forms when a person's words consistently align with truth. They understand that authority is not declared, it is sensed. Their power lies in the fact that they never chase attention, and thus, it comes to them naturally. In corporate rooms, classrooms, or families, their silence can redirect an entire discussion. They know that wisdom needs no defense, only timing. Their pauses speak as loudly as their sentences, and their calm presence steadies those around them. This is the paradox of the silent authority. By saying less, they create space for others to listen more, not just to them, but to themselves. Their psychology is rooted in emotional self-regulation, the ability to remain unmoved amidst chaos. They do not react, they respond. And this calmness is misread as coldness by those who depend on noise to feel alive. But silence, for them, is not withdrawal, it is command. It is how they maintain their power, protect their peace, and embody the truth that stillness is not emptiness, but presence refined. The listener's intelligence. Listening is the quietest form of love, and those who do not talk much often possess this form of intelligence in abundance. They are absorbers of the unspoken, hearing what people mean instead of what they say. They notice micro-expressions, tone shifts, pauses pregnant with hesitation or pain. They listen not to reply, but to understand. The listener's intelligence is emotional empathy sharpened into intuition. It allows them to decode the language beneath language, the gestures, silences, and slips that reveal the truth. They function like mirrors, reflecting others back to themselves, often without uttering a word. In psychological terms, they possess heightened interpersonal sensitivity, but unlike social chameleons, they do not mimic or manipulate. They simply hold space, the rarest form of communication in a world addicted to self-expression. Their silence is not absence, it's containment, a vessel for other people's truths. The listener's intelligence is why people often find themselves confessing to them unexpectedly. There's a safety in their quiet, a sense that they will not be judged, only witnessed. And in a noisy world where everyone talks to be heard, the listener heals by hearing. The keeper of mysteries. The person who doesn't talk much often carries an unseen depth, an invisible archive of thoughts, feelings, and truths that never reach the surface. They are the keepers of mysteries, both personal and cosmic. To the outside world, they may seem reserved, perhaps even distant. But within them, entire constellations of insight flicker silently, never rushed into speech. They live in the sacred space between knowing and revealing, a quiet intersection where intuition meets restraint. They understand that words, once spoken, cannot be taken back, that language, while powerful, can also distort. And so they choose silence, not as evasion, but as guardianship. Their silence becomes a kind of temple, where thoughts are allowed to mature in solitude before they are released. Here, wisdom ripens slowly, free from the contamination of gossip, assumption, or misinterpretation. They are the ones you instinctively trust with what you cannot say aloud, not because they promise confidentiality, but because something in their energy assures it. They hold space like ancient libraries, filled with secrets, yet echoing only with quiet reverence. To them, discretion is an art form. They know that truth loses purity when overexposed, that the most sacred insights must sometimes remain veiled until the world is ready to receive them. It is not that they do not wish to speak, it is that they sense certain truths are alive, and must be spoken only when the moment aligns with their maturity. Power, like wisdom, diminishes when flaunted. Thus, they walk softly through life, carrying invisible weight with grace. They are translators of what cannot yet be said, mediators between mystery and meaning. When they do speak, their words often carry the echo of what remains unsaid, that quiet gravity that makes people pause, sensing that beneath the sentence, there is a universe. The weight of unspoken words. Yet silence is not without its burdens. For the quiet soul, there exists a haunting paradox. The same stillness that protects them can also imprison them. There are nights when their thoughts circle endlessly, trapped in the chambers of their own mind. Unspoken words echo inward, apologies never delivered, confessions never voiced, love letters that remain folded in the heart. The quiet person knows the ache of articulation denied, when what wants to be expressed trembles at the edge of their tongue but never crosses. Sometimes silence is wisdom. Other times, it is fear wearing wisdom's mask. Psychologically, this can emerge as inhibited communication, the unconscious belief that one's words will not be understood, or worse, will disturb the fragile harmony of connection. So they swallow their truths, again and again, until the body itself begins to carry their weight. But even this suppression holds a strange kind of beauty. The psyche silences itself not to punish, but to protect, waiting for safety, for resonance, for someone who can hear without distortion. This waiting is not cowardice, it is fidelity to authenticity. They refuse to speak falsehood just to fill space. And yet, healing for them does not come from learning to speak constantly, but from learning to speak truly. It comes from realizing that expression need not be loud to be real, that a whisper of honesty carries more power than 1,000 performative declarations. Because even silence must breathe. It must occasionally open its lungs and let the truth exhale. Otherwise, it turns heavy, transforming from sanctuary into solitude, from peace into ache. The journey of the quiet soul is learning when silence serves truth, and when it silences it. The spiritual silence. At its deepest level, the quiet person's silence transcends psychology. It becomes a spiritual practice. Their restraint is not mere temperament, it is a devotion to presence. They sense that beneath the world's constant noise lies a subtle hum, the sound of existence itself. To be still is to tune into that frequency, to hear the soft pulse that threads through everything alive. In their stillness, they align with that rhythm. Their silence becomes a kind of prayer, not spoken but felt. While others chase attention, they chase alignment. They do not withdraw from life, they sink deeper into it. They listen not only to words but to energy, the pauses between sentences, the breath before truth, the trembling sincerity behind someone's voice. This is the listening of the soul, the kind that perceives essence beyond expression. In such silence, they become conduits for the invisible, for intuition, empathy, and quiet wisdom that cannot be accessed through noise. They begin to see that silence is not the absence of sound but the presence of everything. It is the space in which reality whispers its secrets, the soil in which awareness grows roots. And in that sacred quiet, they uncover the paradox of all communication, that silence, when conscious, is not the opposite of speech, but its perfection. It is where meaning transcends language, where the heart speaks directly to existence. They understand that the loudest truths require no announcement, they simply emanate. Thus, the quiet soul becomes a living still point in a spinning world, not detached, but anchored. Not empty, but overflowing with unspoken clarity. Their silence is not a void. It is a mirror for the divine, the place where truth finally echoes back as itself. The symphony of quiet souls. The people who don't talk too much are not broken or incomplete. They are composers of quiet symphonies. Their restraint, their stillness, their thoughtfulness are acts of balance in a world drowning in noise. They remind us that silence is not a void but a vessel, a sacred space where meaning can breathe. To understand them is to remember that words are sacred currency, and that some souls, knowing their worth, spend them sparingly. They are the silent architects of harmony, the observers who notice what noise forgets, the thinkers who preserve the world's last fragments of depth. And when they finally speak, it is not to fill the air, but to awaken it.